Thanks again for being part of this. I'm Arte Merritt, and I have a great panel here to talk about customer service chatbots. So we have Loren with Intuit, Michael with Jacada, and Mira with GoDaddy. But how about I let you guys all introduce yourselves real briefly?
Sure, I'll go first since you started with me as an introduction. So Loren Lacy, I'm the product manager in our digital platform teams, and I'm responsible for all of our AI, ML led text and voice bots.
All right, Michael Haisten. I am the principal solutions consultant at Jacada for self-service. And for those of you who haven't, may not have heard of Jacada or are familiar with us, we are a customer service automation company with a rather broad product portfolio, but chatbots fall into the self-service category.
And I'm Mira. I manage the conversational AI at GoDaddy. So we have a chatbot deployed for our in-app users that helps to automate common tasks, walk you through common questions, and also help get you to a human if that's what you need.
Great. Well, thanks again for being part of this. Just to get started, why should a company or enterprise build customer service chatbots? Like, either if you're building them for yourselves, for your own companies, or in the case of like Michael, helping other companies, why should enterprises be building chatbots for customer service?
It's a way that people want to interact, at least that we've found. Some people don't ever want to pick up the phone and call. And so if you don't have a chat channel, then you're missing out. But then by providing chat bots in that channel, it allows people to self-serve, just the same reason that you would create help articles for people who may want to figure something out themselves or do it without talking to a human. But additionally, it also helps us to automate things that our humans, it's not efficient for our humans to be doing, and we can do it actually better by doing it through chat or through these automation methods.
Yeah, and I think for Intuit, it's about getting our customers to the answers to their questions the most efficient way possible, right? It is in the point of need, being able to proactively surface, hey, do you need help with this? And then as Mira said, if there are ways that we can walk them through how to do it right then and there, automating, helping them do a step-by-step question and answer of how to do it, rather than reading a help article and then trying to come back in and do it. We actually have our digital assistants linked into the product so that they can actually take the action on your behalf to do something that would be listed in the article as, step 1, go here, step 2, do this. Well, the digital assistant can actually assist the customer in actually completing that action. And if that's the case, then we get our customers back up and working as quickly as possible. And then if not, we can ask them, some additional questions and get them to the right live assistant in the most efficient way, so that we route you to the right person and help you resolve your problem.
I think that's a great point, actually, is that you can understand what they need before you route them, before you get them somewhere. So you can understand that intent and use it to be more efficient or be just more surgical about how you're operating.
Intelligent routing, in a way.
Yeah, indeed.
You could even consider that partial automation in some way, right? If a customer gets halfway through a process, and you're able to get the agent, not only route them correctly, but get the agent the context of what just took place, and the agent can pick up maybe halfway through, then you're able to shorten that live conversation quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's a key, right? Don't do a cold handoff when you're escalating into a live person. Give the agent or the expert all of the context that the customer has already gone through, so that it will know what steps that they've already tried. If possible, give them error messages, give them last article searched, all of that information that can help not have the customer have to repeat it. And again, getting us down, trying to minimize the amount of time that it takes the customer to get their answer to their question or their problem resolved. So passing along all that context is a very key part of that.
Another thing that we found actually is that we have different use cases come through in our chatbot than we see in our help article search. So I think there's something about how people look for help, or the way the signals that they take when they have a certain problem, and that you're just allowing another channel or another way for them to tell you what they need so that you can help them solve that problem and get back to whatever they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. In a similar way, we're not trying to make this an either or. It's either help or a digital assistant, right? It's a both and we have certain demographics of people who would rather go through the help articles and try and do that, and we have people who would rather engage in a conversational way of solving and looking up their questions.
This is great. Yeah, what I'm hearing is all around some things that stand out is the efficiency, helping people get their answer, get past where they're stuck, the intelligent routing. So some of it's automated, some is just helping route. And then when you do route, make sure you pass that context along, again, for the efficiency and helping get the user what they need. And then being in any of the channels is quite helpful as well. So how do you go about starting then? What do you start with? Like what use case, or how do you even get the chatbot off the ground? Or Loren, go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in most cases, it probably makes sense to start with a live chat channel first, right? Get that under your belt for at least for a period of time to collect some data. Because if you're offering a bot over chat, probably the most similar way a human would communicate with that bot would be, how they communicate rather informally in a chat or messaging type format. So if you've got an idea of what people are seeking out in the live chat channel, I think the topics, the kind of the use case mix is probably going to be pretty similar. And you also have a good corpus of training data that you can use to help train the bot as well. I think it's probably difficult to bite off more than you can chew in a phase one. I think we like to recommend a phased approach where you kind of use, say, the 80-20 rule, the few use cases that make up the most volume. Start with those, get those under your belt working well, and then start to layer on from there. I think is generally a pretty good methodology.
I could tell you how not to start, because that's been our journey in that our chatbot program grew out of our help article team, and we started by just kind of shoehorning help articles into this turn-based conversation because that's what we knew, and it was really not good. So take my advice and do what Michael said. But we did use our human agents as a really good resource in terms of what are the things, just anecdotally even, because maybe you don't have so much telemetry around what's coming into live care, but just anecdotally, those people are the ones who know what's happening and what are the things that they see the most and what are the things that they would like to have handled upstream or to be offered to customers that upstream, or what kind of information would they like to be passed on once they get a customer? How would they like to see that context that Loren was talking about sharing with them? How would they like to see it? What's the easiest way for them? So I'd say they're using your live care as a resource is a really good approach, because they're a huge stakeholder in whatever you're going to build. So that's been really useful for us along the whole journey as we've grown and matured and gotten better.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what Intuit has taken the approach. And in addition to what Michael was saying, like we didn't have our channel mix was largely phone based. We didn't have a chat type channel that we had as a broad offering historically. And so what we actually did was we went and looked at the, Mira, like you said, we went and looked at our phone data, and we found cases where there were high resolution rates and short handle times. So these indicated things that agents knew how to solve pretty quickly, and there wasn't a lot of complicated back and forth needed to understand what was going on. And so those were the kind of use cases we wanted to have our digital assistants solve from the very beginning. Things that we knew we would have a high resolution rate for, that were probably easy to automate because the agents could already do them fairly quickly. And so that's kind of what we started with. And then we went and looked at our, we used some text analytics to pull the voice transcripts to, as Michael said, to figure out how customers were asking these questions. So what was it, how were they phrasing it to the agents? In addition to that, we also added a kind of a way to crowdsource ways of people asking the question. So we're able to put in a question of saying, how would you ask for your tax refund status? You know, what phrasing would you use? And we put that out on a crowdsourcing platform, and we actually let people pick, you know, respond back in a way that we do this so that we don't get, and internally we know how we would ask for that question, and we can use some of our customers as anecdotal, but this way we actually get it out into a pretty broad population so that we get some diversified ways of asking for it.
What was the audience of the crowdsourcing, Loren? Was that customers or employees or both?
It actually goes out more just broadly into it, kind of, if you think about a Mechanical Turk kind of platform, where we can just say, you know, there are these services out there that you can get this from, saying, hey, would you like to make a few bucks answer these questions? And this is one of the questions that you can serve up in that platform to say, how would you phrase this, asking this question?
Okay.
Yeah, that bias is so important to understand. Like how you talk about something internally is likely not how your customers are going to talk about it, or there's definitely going to be people who don't talk about it that way. And so to set the expectation for yourself too, that you can design and train as well as you can, and then once you release something, you have to keep a really close eye on it to be tuning it to what to really make sure that it's performing the way that, you know, to the levels that you want, because people are going to be asking things in strange ways that you didn't expect. And so publishing is not being done. There's more work at that point.
Exactly. Mira, I think that's a critical point, Mira. Like that, to your point, launch day is day zero.
Right.
It's not the end day, because if you don't tune and if you don't understand what is not working and quickly fix it, people are going to lose confidence in your digital assistant, and they're going to go elsewhere, which is usually calling in and finding a different way to a live person. And that defeats the purpose of getting customers answers faster. And so the more, you know, plan to have a good 2-3 solid weeks where you are watching this thing hour by hour, making updates, fixing content, tuning intents, watching how people are responding, where they're being successful and where they're not, and making as rapid an improvements as your system will allow.
Right, it's like that constant iteration. And what I always heard from folks is updating, maintaining those training models that's one of the, you know, most important parts, or can be one of the more challenging pieces too. And it is that looking at all that info. Yeah, you might think, you know, like if you're a pizza company, you might think, you know, how people order pizza, but then when you actually see how they're saying it, it can be quite a bit different. So you talked about using, you talked about using some of the voice channels as training data, some of the outsourcing like Mechanical Turk types of training data. That's all, you know, pretty interesting stuff. What about the channels themselves? Which channels to approach? Like, you know, the text-based chatbot. You mentioned a little bit of IVR. related things, but did any explore like Alexa and those types of voice platforms too, or?
We have that as on our roadmap, kind of, but we start with what you know, right? So the digital interfaces were the easiest because there you can present cards to users. Do you want A, B, or C, right? And they're easier to interact with the users. From there, we went into the voice channel, into our natural language IVR, to be able to offer these same conversations in a voice way. You have to ask a little bit more clarifying questions because you can't present them, which of these 5 options would you like to be? You actually have to, iterate through them. We are exploring sort of some of the mega platform integrations like Alexa or Siri or something like that. But those are more of things that we're starting with rather than, or having as a progression of where we're going rather than starting with those.
And same for us. We started on web with chat and text-based conversation because it was easier for us, and it was sort of an MVP is easier than trying to boil the ocean, of course. But we're looking at moving into more text channels because we offer support on those channels, and so we're sort of following where the business is already has footprint, but yeah, voice is more difficult for us. I think some people have it the other way, where they start in voice because that's where a majority of their operations are, or all their data, and it's just it makes more sense. I think it depends on what your what your layout looks like.
Coming from a technology provider standpoint, I think Mira makes a great point there of, really looking at where your customers are and starting there, and maybe moving forward to other channels depending on what the demand is. One thing I would recommend to companies as they're making these decisions is, oftentimes we see lots of companies that are very siloed in their approach. You may have different bots built on different platforms, one for each channel within different departments, and there's just a lot of rework that goes into that. So one thing I would recommend is to have some sort of unified, AI or conversational strategy, so that you're not taking as much of a siloed approach. And there are bot frameworks out there that allow you to essentially take the same experiences that are, if you build them once and then actually leverage them across these different channels. And you can take a phased approach, right? Start on text and maybe add messaging, and then, I can take the same experience. I think I'm ready to add it on the IVR. You can start to layer things on without a whole lot of rework. So, I would recommend considering a framework like that.
Yeah, that's fair. You mentioned something that's actually kind of interesting. Or touched upon a good point, is that unified AI team. I mean, you see that, GoDaddy and Intuit are good examples there, that you have those teams all built out around conversational interfaces. It's, in the case of Intuit, it's a pretty large team.
Yes. Yeah. And it's even broken down by product, right? We have a team that's focusing on our QuickBooks digital assistants, TurboTax digital assistant, and then even working in separating those out into the voice channel, so that they kind of focus in on a lot of the specialized, because I agree with Michael, like a lot of this stuff carries over and a lot of it's common. And then there are specific pieces that are a little bit different. We do fundamentally treat our digital assistants a little bit different than voice, simply because in our world, and I think this is like, where do you start? Like, we started with a logged in state, so an authenticated user. So we know a lot about you at that point. We know what products you own, we know what product you're in, we know all of these things where we can have a lot higher success in interacting with you. Mm-hmm. Versus the voice channel, which when you start out, all we know is your phone number, and we can do some lookups and try and understand if you're calling from a registered number and things like that. But the digital assistants right now always have a little bit more of advantage because they know you're already authenticated and they know exactly who you are, versus the voice channel, which is it takes a little bit longer to validate the account that you're calling about. Is it the one that you're, with the phone number that you're calling about? Are you calling in from an alternate phone number? Should we use a different phone number to look up your account? And that is something that if you're authenticated, you don't have to do. So it's just you're exactly right. The vast majority is common, and there are some unique pieces depending on which channel you're in.
Yeah, that's fair. One thing you guys have mentioned around having the different channels, making it easier for the customers that they have the different options. How do you even generate awareness that these chatbots exist, like to let customers know they can go down this path instead of calling an agent or searching through the knowledge base?
So we offer it directly in that path. So we have the language around the customer journey is contact us, and then you start with our conversational assistant, our automation, and in order to not validate and not violate that expectation, we always offer you contact options at the same time that we're offering you self-assistance. So it's like, well, I know you clicked on contact us. Would you like to talk to a human? Or, we can help you with that without talking to a human if you prefer. So we always give you a choice, because that's another really important principle for us, is to let the customer decide. I think Loren mentioned it earlier, like however you want to contact us is fine. But we have these options, and so we offer it in that path, just along the way as like a signpost, like, hey, we have options over here. So but in IVR it's a little different, because offering options is a little bit more difficult, and so it sort of is use case based. So if you want to reset your password, we're going to just send you through an automation prior to connecting you with a human, if that's what you still need at the end of that.
Yeah, I think it's the same for us, Arte, as we in our products, we surface it in a couple ways. One is through the contact us, like Mira says. You can invoke the digital assistant similar to how you can invoke help as well. So we have both ways that you can actually interact with it. And we run recipes and contests between help and digital assistant all the time, trying to figure out where to surface which is performing better, a help kind of experience or a contact us kind of a CUI kind of experience, a conversational UI experience. But all of our contact us is the same with Mira. It starts with a conversational framework where we ask you why you're calling to get you to the right person, because that's a much better experience than just giving you a phone number. Contact us, here's a phone number, call it, because then you're going to hit the IVR and you're going to need to answer those questions anyway. So if we can go through that actually in product, we can understand the question you're trying to call. By the way, then we do hours of operation tests and we say, look, that channel is closed. I can help you with some self-help. Would you like to continue? And so it can solve for kind of hours of operation. And the other thing that it really helps with as well is that if we have two channels that serve you, a chat channel and a voice channel as an example, we can tell you, look, the wait time on the phones is X minutes. The wait time in the chat channel is Y minutes. Which would you like to connect to? So what Mira said, always offering the customer the control of how they do it, but giving them as much information as we have to try and do that. Do I have a self-help answer? Well, okay, let me do that right now. I don't have to talk to anyone. No, I want to talk to someone. Okay, is it chat or is it phone or is it messaging or is it whatever other channels we'll be introducing in the future.
Yeah, I think Arte, you hit the nail on the head with the word awareness. I think that's really key. Your self-service offerings have to be available all the time, and they have to be kind of front and center and easily found by the customers. And I like the way that Mira and Loren have kind of laid out using Contact Us and using the conversational bot, so to speak, to offer different channels and offer the self-service assistance kind of within the experience itself, right? Instead of having to go hunt and find a button or something. So I think that's a great model. Proactive invitations could be helpful in certain scenarios. Also, maybe even sending, say, SMS messages at points where a customer might need help. So kind of think about cutting off that contact that is about to happen based on maybe someone's order being late, or kind of depending on what kind of business you are. Think about what that someone who is about to call you and offer help proactively. One of the things that I've seen where a company did make a mistake in this area is where they simply used the bot to front end the chat channel alone, and it wasn't really part of that overarching support or contact us experience. And their chat product actually hid the button to chat when all of their agents were busy, which meant that at that point in time where someone might need the bot the most because there was a wait, there was no option, the button was missing, right? And so as soon as someone comes to look for your button and it's gone, they're not going to look for it the next time because they're not going to know it exists. So you kind of set yourself up for an endless cycle of disappointment in that.
Right. That's not good. You're starting to touch upon with the awareness, but also educating the users about these channels. How do you educate the users how to actually use the chatbot, or what the chatbot can and can't do?
For us, we have an opening kind of statement. I'm your digital assistant. I can do things like, and we list sort of kind of the top hitters of what we actually can do. The other thing that we've done is we've worked really hard on the fallback state. So if we don't know what to do, we've actually integrated with our help system. And so we basically take the utterance that the customer's typed or in the voice channel they've spoken. And if we don't know how to do it as a specific curated intent, we will then send it off to our help system and say, I'm not sure how to do that, but I have some information that might help you. And we get the information to the customer that way.
And with the use of buttons, I like the greeting idea that Loren just mentioned, that you can use buttons in that greeting to kind of maybe list out some of your most common intents, and those can serve as guardrails around what the bot's trained to do and does most often. Not that you couldn't state your question in your own words, but that may make it easier for the people that are looking for one of those really common intents.
Yeah, I like the idea of the pulling in the knowledge management when you can't answer the question as a fallback. Are there any other, sometimes we hear people say like how to get people back on the happy path. I don't know if there's other tips or techniques you think might work or any you've seen.
We've been exploring an idea of like contextual fallbacks, which means instead of just having a single fallback that is default, that is all the time, if you say something we don't understand, you just get this one response, is contextualizing, is putting guardrails around different groups of intents, so that if you say something that we don't understand, we at least know what you were talking about, and so that we can ask we can ask you to repeat or do whatever we're going to do in that fallback situation in a more intelligent way, because we just have a little bit more information rather than just we don't know what you're saying. We know it was in this topic, and so we can at least start with that as a basis for getting you back on track, or understanding that actually you're switching topics, like maybe you're done with that one and you want to talk about something else, right? So understanding a little bit more about what you were talking about rather than just having a single default.
Yeah, and I think similar to that, what we're doing a little bit at Intuit as well is trying to add some AI ML to it so that we can actually personalize your greeting. So based on information that we know about you. Are you a brand new customer? Did you just complete a task? Did you just encounter an error in the product? Using those signals from your customer journey, we can actually present those. So what the bot can do might actually, the greeting that we have might actually change based on where you're invoking the assistant in the product, or what action you might have just taken. So if you just had a banking error, like you were trying to import your banking transactions into QuickBooks, and you just received an error, and you click on the digital assistant, our machine learning will do things like, have a greeting that says, are you, I see that you just had a problem trying to connect your banking information. Is that what you're trying to get help on? And it instills a lot more confidence in the digital assistant that they're going to be able to help because it's aware of what you just did.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like any time that you can use information about the customer that you know, you should, right? I think previously there was a little bit of trepidation about doing that because it was creepy. But I think we're past that, thankfully, and it's all just in service of getting the customer what they need and answering the question that they have, or fixing their thing before maybe they even know that it's broken, right? And so using all of that information that you already have about them to just perform better in helping them fix their problem.
Part of the context. It's one more piece of the context, what you know
Yeah.
about them already. Yeah, no, I like that, in that getting people past where they're stuck, and that proactive identifying is interesting too. One of the things that I thought was neat with Intuit, just when you do those knowledge management type answers, that you prompt the folks after, was that helpful or not? Like just
Yes.
that feedback loop is quite helpful too.
Artie, I've got a follow-up question for Mira based on something she said earlier. So
Yeah.
you mentioned, Mira, that your use case mix was different between your conversational bot and your knowledge search, for example. So I would just from that, I would think that if you're searching a knowledge base, you're probably expecting a somewhat generic answer. Where if you're going into a conversational experience, are you seeing the use cases in the conversational experience? Are those more personalized in nature, where knowing that context of the customer's account and that sort of thing would help address those issues?
It definitely does. I think it really is just more about learned behavior for these different surfaces that we have so far, just as people. If you go to search something, you're not going to put in a whole statement about everything that's actually happening with that problem. You're going to put in truncated statements that have keywords, and in our case anyway, and maybe this is also true elsewhere, but our customers don't always know what to search for when they're searching. So I think their search journey is often like, I'm going to search this and I'm going to see what the results are, and then I'm going to modify my search based on what I just saw, or maybe that article that I read. And so there's a repetitive nature to that, to the point where I'm going to search add a record, right? When that might not have been what I was going to search for in the beginning. And so when they come to a conversational interaction, they're going to put in the whole statement of what's going on. And so that's totally true. I think that's what you were alluding to. We definitely see that. But we actually are seeing different use cases in the bot that people aren't searching for, and it's all around troubleshooting. So people are not searching the help article for troubleshooting a certain thing. And I think, and it may be a hybrid of all of these things going on. Like maybe they just don't think there's an answer, or maybe they're searching for specific little pieces of what's happening, and they're not searching for that overall troubleshooting issue. But then we are seeing that in the bot. We are seeing, like, my website is down kind of things that we're not necessarily seeing people search for. And so, it's just interesting, the different things that people are coming conversationally. They're asking about things in their website builder that we don't have any articles for, because there's no search data around that. We write our articles based on what we're seeing people search for, and they're asking the bot for these really specific website builder questions that we don't see them asking about. And so, I don't know why. It may be a personality type. Right? The people who want to interact conversationally have different issues than people who search a help center. But that was an interesting insight that we've come to more recently, is that we actually have different content to write in the bot than we are seeing people look for in articles.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you end up taking it back into the articles? Do you use some of those? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we have we're not doing the same thing that Loren's mentioning, where we actually query our help center in the case where we don't understand in the bot, but we do have a shared strategy on the types of things that we actually will send people to a help article for, as opposed to writing conversational content, because maybe that type of content just works better, or it's easier for someone to follow in a web page help article mode rather than in a conversation.
Fair enough. It's interesting what's coming through, hearing like how you're measuring success. It's like getting folks past where they're stuck, getting the answer they want efficiently, even the efficient routing. Like how do you know this chatbot's successful or not? Like what are your goals? Is it the containment and escalation too? Like, are there high level goals that you're trying to achieve? Any?
Sure, I'll start.
Yeah.
Of course, we have metrics
Yeah.
and what it is. And the two key ones that we do are interaction rate. So of the times offered, how often do people actually accept the offer to interact, right? And then we measure escalation rate. So how often do they opt to talk to a live expert and specialist? And then we have what we call, and containment is part of that, right? So if you don't request to escalate, then you're contained in the digital assistant, which is great because you're back to work and you do that. And then we also have some secondary measures, which we call, our do no harm metrics. So we can drive all of the, super high containment, and what it could do is just make people so frustrated they cancel their service or they do something else. And we don't want that either. So we don't want containment at the expense of, reduced units or what it is. So we actually then also measure whatever the product metric is, whether it's, subscriptions or cancellations or success in filing your taxes. And we look at cohorts that specifically are offered the digital assistant versus other methods.
And that's where we're moving. We have a helpfulness rating at the end of all of our content conversationally. So we use that as an indicator mostly of what's not working, frankly, rather than looking at driving helpfulness up. We really look at driving unhelpfulness down, because that's the majority of volume of that rating that we see. So really it's an indicator of what we need to work on. But looking at the entire view is really where we're moving to, because we've been a little bit siloed in measuring ourselves to ourselves, and really in understanding how it's impacting the overall customer experience is really important.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Loren.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's good metrics that I've heard so far. One of the ones that I might add to it is some measure of customer effort. I've seen companies do that using a survey question, but one of our large customers in the insurance roadside assistance space actually measures the average amount of time that the bot would assist a customer through requesting a rescue. Comparing that to the time it takes with a live agent. So one of their goals is that the automated experience would be shorter than the live experience.
One thing I meant to ask earlier on when you were talking about strategy and why to build the chatbot, just given the situation we're in with COVID and the pandemic, are you seeing an increased interest in, I guess in Michael's case, enterprises wanting to build the customer service chatbots, and then for Loren and Mira, do you see more interest in the users wanting to use the chatbots?
From a provider's standpoint, I think there was window of opportunity early on, probably back in March, where certainly these businesses in the travel, travel insurance, retail, certain industries were facing such a crunch, along with healthcare. Organizations were facing such a crunch, they just couldn't handle the volume, right? So they needed some way to automate. Now, I think what I typically saw in most cases, because of the really, really short time frame to launch something, most of the experiences that I saw that were launched were less conversational, more menu-based, whether they were in a conversational format or not. Many of them were menu-based or simply, web form type interactions. But I think over time, it certainly opens up companies' thoughts around digital adoption and more long-term plans. Whether it was, handling that initial crunch or whether it's planning for the future, I think it's furthering the discussion, right, with conversational capabilities and self-service.
Yeah, and I think for us, Arte, it didn't really, so we had a pretty virtualized workforce to begin with. And so like COVID, when everyone got sent home, we didn't suffer from lack of capacity to handle customer requests. We did see a huge surge when the government started offering the payroll payment protection program because Intuit was a provider of that. And our digital assistants and voice assistants were absolutely critical in that way because it was a huge amount of requests for how do I get the information, which is, they were just having problem. Do I qualify? Where do I find this information? Are you a person who is going to be able to administer this? All of those kind of questions that were really, you could find on our self-help articles, but directing people to the exact right place was something that our digital assistants did really well in, either the voice assistant and the digital assistants. And so we were able to stand up and tune these in, I think about less than 12 hours, get everything, all the content in place and all that stuff. And that sort of saved us from having to service those with a live agent when a lot of the information was go here, fill out this application, and that's the starting point, and then we'll be able to help you. And so once those entry points were open, we could be a little bit more helpful to the customers who were seeking help with that. So that's not unique to COVID necessarily, but it's unique to anything that arises due to a crisis of something, an outage, a product outage, a change in regulation, whatever it is. Those apply to many customers. So it allows you to front end known call drivers that you know how to handle well.
Fair enough.
This is what we were talking about, which kids guest appearance.
That is awesome! Yay!
At GoDaddy, we help you get your business online. So, in the current environment that COVID has opened up, we have certainly seen huge volume, in people who need to do that in order to change their operations. And our automations have, and our conversational AI has been able to offer content that we have to help with that. But I wouldn't say that we're specifically seeing any other kind of shift, like people more apt to use it or more likely to opt in to automation or not. But to Michael's point, it certainly changed the conversation internally at GoDaddy about, about the place and value of automations for customers. So.
That's fair. I'll leave it at one last question for all of you is just where do you see the future of chatbots? Any things you think need to change to improve, or where the things are going? Any last thoughts on chatbots?
Yeah, I'll start. So I think for us at Intuit, like the digital assistants are becoming more, so trying to embed them more in the product directly and to be more proactive. So reaching out to you when you need help and helping you solve problems, and then understanding more of your customer journey so that we can personalize the answer. And then kind of a proliferation of those assistants into all the channels of support that we offer.
Yeah, I think my point is similar, but that actually, we started with a chat bot, a text-based conversational assistant, and I think that really the perspective change on it is that it's not one thing, and you don't want to approach it as just this one entity that's in this one channel. It's really, for us at GoDaddy at least, it's really about how can we automate things for you, and that means not only just getting you the information for how to do it, but also actually doing it for you. And I think that that's really the direction that a lot of services I've also seen out there are going, is how can we connect all these disparate pieces that we have around our company into that a human touches and connects, but how can we do that with technology?
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Mira. Like, we're trying to also do the same thing, which is, don't tell me how to solve it, go solve it, right?
Right. Just go do it.
Just give me permission to go fix it for you. That's all we need, right?
Yeah, I think, everything we've heard from Loren and Mira so far from a practitioner standpoint, I've heard a lot about personalized experiences and authenticated experiences that you can offer, automations to solve people's specific problems, right? I think we're well beyond the age of the FAQ bot that launched, a decade or more ago, right? So I think we're in more of a stage of the low code bot framework, kind of automation area where we are able to enable the bot, the fulfillment logic and flows to be offered across multiple channels rather easily, so you can have a more consolidated AI strategy. Proactive is a great concept. I think you're starting to see more and more of that. And I think in terms of where do we go from here, I think I may be a little bit more realistic than maybe some of the major analysts who get judged by how many clicks they get on their articles. But I think more machine learning in not only the initial training and categorizing thousands of questions and intents from customers in terms of building that corpus and your dialogue design. So I think making that easier to get these bots off the ground quicker initially will make a big difference as we head into the next few years, along with making the feedback loop easier and more automated, right? As enabling using machine learning, and I know it sounds like science fiction, but we're getting closer to this being reality, where not there yet, but getting closer to where the bots can learn what people are saying and start to, if not react to them, at least know what needs to be built, rather than there being quite so much human involvement in that feedback loop and adding new training phrases and building new, building out intent fulfillment processes, automating more of that. I think it's where we're headed. Maybe a few years away, but
Automating the automation.
Automating the automation, yeah. Bots. Yeah.
Love it.
That's great. Yeah, I appreciate you guys doing this. Thanks again. It's been interesting hearing all the different perspectives, and learned quite a bit through this. I appreciate you guys doing this.
Thanks for having us.
Enjoyed it.
It was
It
fun.
was a great conversation, Arte.
Yeah.